Hello. So I guess we'll get started with some introductions. I'm Caroline, and I'm presenting my Eco House final project. Why should you live in my Eco House? Well, my Eco House is located in Central Virginia, and there are a lot of great reasons why Central Virginia is such a great location. First off, Central Virginia, it's definitely a little bit more rural than other regions, but it has a great location because proximity to major cities like Charlottesville, Richmond, Northern Virginia, DC, all of these areas are accessible for the most part. Central Virginia also offers a lot of recreational opportunities like parks, hiking. In the Blue Ridge Mountains, there are plenty of sports to play. Once again, the scenery of the Blue Ridge Mountains is something that can't be fabricated. Central Virginia also has lots of access to clean air, exercise, farm to table communities where restaurants directly source their food from local farms. Lastly, the education in Central Virginia, the high schools are pretty great and kids will have easy access to a great education. So now we're going to look at some air quality that I've collected throughout the year. I gathered this data using AirNow. AirNow is like an online website that has real-time data. And the first slide that we will be looking at comes from August 16th, 2017. So this was in the summer. And as you can see, the AQI is pretty high around, the Washington, D.C., the Philadelphia region, a little bit in, actually a lot in northern West Virginia. For the most part, Central Virginia is pretty clear of any dangerous or unhealthy AQI levels. We continue in October, and Central Virginia, once again, is pretty clear, with the exception of maybe northern Central Virginia, which might have a touch of yellow coming from the Washington, D.C. area. Once again, in November 15th, you can see surrounding areas close to Greensboro or Washington, D.C. again, they have unhealthy or slightly unhealthy levels of ozone, but Central Virginia is pretty clear. And most recently, in March, it's pretty clear as well. So next, we're going to talk about some alternative energy sources that I will be using in my Eco House. So this is the poster that I used, and it's pretty small, so we're gonna break it up. So sustainable energy. How will energy be provided to the prototype house? I looked at a couple of options, and the first option I looked at was biomass or biofuel. And biofuel is made up of plant material, wood, corn, sugarcane, and grasses. It's not the most practical biofuel because there's a high cost of production. As Virginia Tech has stated, there are more than 23 barriers to biofuel production, and it might not be the wisest option to select as a source of energy for the new house. So I looked at another type of energy, wind energy. Wind energy is pretty developed, it's come a long way, and it's a lot more mature than biofuel. There are no long-term costs associated with wind energy, which is pretty great. But one of the downsides to wind energy was the practicality. I wasn't sure where in Central Virginia Mr. Wagner would like to build his house. So there are a couple of cities within Central Virginia, and wind turbines are only really feasible if the Eco House is located away from the city. So I didn't think that the wind would be the most practical for Mr. Wagner, simply because if he picked a city, then it would be pretty much impossible to establish the wind turbine without violating zoning laws. Solar energy is what I finally settled on. So solar energy is very common. It's free because it comes from the sun. However, one of the main downsides is that, well, the sun sets. So the solar energy is not consistent. And one of the solutions I found while researching was the implementation of a battery that could store the solar energy. Mr. Wagner will install solar panels on the house, but he will also install a battery or some kind of reservoir that can keep energy and utilize it when the sun is when there's clouds or at nighttime. So in conclusion, yeah, the Eco House is going to use solar energy. Solar and wind are readily available, but solar is more practical than wind energy because you don't have to create like giant wind turbines. Next, we're going to talk about the wind energy lab that I conducted this past year. And during the wind energy lab, I went outside in my yard and I measured the speed of the wind rather, on 5 separate days. And I measured it using a protractor. And as you can see, the average wind speed was about 4.4 kilometers per hour. And this is evidence that Mr. Wagner's house should not be utilizing wind energy, because 4.4 kilometers per hour is definitely not windy enough to generate any kind of significant energy. I mean, you can take this with a grain of salt as well. April is a lot windier than October, but for the most part, this is just more evidence that Mr. Wagner should not be utilizing wind energy in his house. We're going to be talking about energy sources next. So this is my impact web diagram, and it's pretty crazy looking. If you can see in the upper left-hand corner of the diagram, there's a gray area that points to solar panels over here. And solar panels are the energy source that I have chosen for this house. And solar panels, the main ingredient, I guess, is crystalline silicon. And crystalline silicon is made in a manufacturing plant, and it has a couple of negative ramifications, such as bad working conditions and poor pay for workers who may manufacture this silicon in maybe a developing country. Solar panels, although they themselves are utilizing free energy, greenhouse gas emissions are emitted in the transport of solar panels. However, solar panels, they reduce our nation's dependence on foreign oil and energy sources, and in the long run, they are very green, more green than oil or petroleum. Now, the house, you can see here, we're going to use recycled lumber, timbercrete, which is a type of brick that is a carbon sink. It's pretty cool. There is a link in the resources slide that you can look more about timbercrete if you're interested, but it's not as waterproof as traditional brick, but overall it's a carbon sink, it's aesthetically pleasing, lighter weight, improved insulation value. For roofing and pavement, we will use RAS, which is sort of recycled pavement. It reduces landfill space by taking that old pavement and just grinding it up and making new pavement, basically. Next, we will talk about, or actually rather, we will look at some of the blueprints for the house. So I utilize SketchUp to create my model house. So this is my model house for SketchUp, or on SketchUp rather. This is what it looks like. I'll give you a little 360 view. There's a lot of glass because personally I like glass in my houses, and I think it's great because it lets in the natural light, reducing energy costs. I couldn't get it on SketchUp, but there will be trees. There's no trees right now, but there should be trees right around this region. So this region here will become foliage, this region and all around here in the back as well. The green here on the top, these are spaces if Mr. Wagner wants to have gardens or flowers or potted flowers on the top here as well as here. Of course, if he doesn't want to, then nobody's going to force him. But on the side here, we have a rain garden here, and we have this sidewalk that's made out of recycled materials. And of course, this sidewalk, even though it looks impermeable, it's definitely permeable to rainwater. The sidewalk that I chose is not it's not an impermeable surface. It's actually a bunch of little surfaces that are kind of dug. They basically smash them into the ground to create the surface. But there's a lot of porous material between the surfaces that lets the water pass through. So this is the parking lot area. So you can see the solar panels are on the roof here. Okay, so here's the layout. So the first floor, you walk into the room and you see the living room and the dining area. So the main area is for communal space. It would be this area inside here, be communal space. for eating and dining and such. There's the kitchen, the bathroom, stairs, office, bedroom. On the second floor, it's mainly bedrooms. Personally, in my bedroom, I would love to have just a wall of glass. I think that's so beautiful, and it's eco-friendly too because it, it conserves light or light energy. It conserves energy that would be normally used to light the house. On the third floor, which is up here in this region, I have a living space, so maybe if the kids want a play area, a bedroom and a bathroom. And then on the fourth floor, which is this kind of upper area here, I have a bedroom, and connecting the third and fourth floor is a ladder. So it's going to be kind of like a loft. The seventh thing that we will be talking about is my attendance at the town hall. So I went to the hall on February 13th, and it was pretty boring, honestly. So they talked about a couple of things. So the Wayland Manor is just basically this neighborhood in our place, and they want more new public amenities on the drive, on the Wayland Manor Drive. Talked about the Bradford Road traffic signal. There are a lot of accidents on Bradford Road, so they're trying to amend the traffic confusion so people don't crash as much. There was a general report from the treasurer as to last month's financial activities. But the thing that really concerns the Eco House is the Facility Standards Manual. And this is a manual that was created by the town hall for the construction of public and private facilities that are part of a subdivision or a development plan that's within the corporate or town limits. The people in the town hall, they were talking about restricting the construction of certain monuments on people or within people's property within a subdivision. This doesn't really concern Mr. Wagner because this type of house is probably not going to be constructed within a cookie cutter subdivision. But if he does want to construct his house in the center of Culpeper, he should know that the people on town council are thinking about passing a law that makes it more difficult for people to erect statues of Confederate generals or things of that nature. But in terms of constructing the house, Mr. Wagner doesn't have to worry about anything like that. So lastly, here are some resources that you can look at if you are interested. Of course, we have the AirNow site where I got all of my air quality data. There's this cool NPR site that tells you the price of electricity in your state, in our state, Virginia. There's this site about placement of wind turbines as to maximize the amount of electricity generated. This is an interesting website. So low E glass is the type of glass that I used in my house or in the Eco House rather. It's a pretty awesome glass type. Basically, in summary, it's great for the Eco House. This site points you to some useful shingles and recycled asphalt manufacturing sites within Virginia. This is the Timbercrete site for insulation, and these are some reclaimed wood sites that can be used on the house. Things that intrigued me, I was surprised about the availability of solar panels within Virginia. In the past, I've done some research and I found it pretty difficult to locally source renewable energy. But as I researched for the Eco House this year, I think that is changing and that the availability of renewable energy sources is increasing with Virginia. So that was a pleasant surprise. Other than that, I had a lot of fun making this project, and especially with the Google SketchUp. That was pretty cool. So thank you for listening to my very long presentation, and goodbye.